Hi, I'm Wilf Nichols and welcome to Homegrown. We're really excited about this week's show because it's the first of 2 shows that we got to produce in Labrador. We'll begin our first show by visiting Alan and Marg Snellgrove of Happy Valley Goose Bay. We'll talk to them about the unique growing conditions of Labrador. These are conditions that can be very difficult, but once they're overcome, it can produce some incredible results. Marg will show us around her flower garden, and believe me, she has more than flowers there, so stay tuned for a surprise. Debbie Preston will be here to talk about a condition called leaf mottling or leaf spot. She'll teach us how to diagnose the problem and find a solution. I'm still roaming some of the trails of the botanical garden, and I'll show you a plant that can be found almost anywhere in Newfoundland. It's almost mystical. It's the fern. Well, that sounds like an appealing show, and when we come back, we'll be in Labrador. And welcome back. We're in Happy Valley Goose Bay at one of the greenhouses of Alan Snellgrove's operation called Two Seasons Greenhouses and Garden Supplies. Alan, it's a delight to meet you.
Good to have you around Labrador, Will.
Well, I got to ask right off the bat, Two Seasons Greenhouses, though, where's that name come from?
I guess about 15 years ago we decided to put a name on something, and because there's only 2 seasons in Labrador, summer and winter, and
really?
So we decided to call it Two Seasons.
Well, I know you've got a few challenges here. When does that growing season start for you?
Normally it starts around the middle of June.
Yeah.
Now people gamble and put stuff out before the middle of June, but normally the middle of June till the end of September.
Wow.
Middle of September.
And middle of September, and then so things sort of close down. First frost when about?
Yeah, well we'll probably have frost any time in September.
Anytime in September. Boy, so it really is a very contracted season.
Yeah, it's pretty tight.
And yet you've got a really good operation. You're growing a lot of plants. You've got a lot of customers.
Yeah, we grow about 150,000 plants from seed.
Wow.
And we've got quite a few customers that come in and from year to year and pick up their vegetable plants and flowers.
Well, just driving around Happy Valley Goose Bay, there are some beautiful gardens around. It's very green, but obviously gardening, we think we got some problems down in the Avalon area, but you've got some gardening problems up here. Obviously short season. What else are your problems?
Well, like for lawns, everything is set from seed. There's no sods.
No sods at all?
No sods at all, and it wouldn't be feasible to grow sods here actually, and it wouldn't be feasible to bring them in because topsoil is so expensive, and every time you'd grow sods you'd have to replace all the topsoil. So.
Well, I got to talk about soil. Look at this soil. I mean, this is beautiful stuff. I mean, in the Avalon, we are always dealing with rocks and everything. I don't see any rocks here, and this looks perfect soil.
Yeah, well, that's 25 years in the making.
25 years of hard work, huh?
We've had a vegetable garden out here now for 25 years, and we used to grow about 4,500 heads of cabbage. So all the leaves being plowed in and.
Yep. Well, it's beautiful stuff. It's obviously very sandy, but you've got enough organic matter in here that it's really holding the moisture nicely.
Oh yeah, that's good. Now normally you've got all sand, no soil at all, and the soil comes out of the black bogs,
right,
and is mixed with a bit of sand. And this is what people use to grow lawns or anything. It's very expensive to grow a lawn from seed and to do it themselves.
I didn't know. A lot of lime, I suppose.
Well, a lot of lime. It's very acidic. You're talking 250 pounds of lime to 1,000 square feet of ground. So,
yeah,
to grow the average lawn would take approximately 60 bags of lime.
Whoa!
To start off, and about 15 loads of topsoil and seed and fertilizer. You'd be looking at if you did all the labor yourself, you'd be into probably about $4,000 to $5,000 to put a lawn in.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But a vegetable garden. I suppose one of the things that I always think of when we get up this far north is that you've got way over us southerners is you've got day length.
We've got, if I remember correctly, at the summertime here, with the growing period, we get about 7 days more sunlight than Newfoundland does, or the island, I should say.
Yeah, yeah.
And we get a lot more sunlight and a lot less rain and cloud. It's usually sunny pretty well every day.
So if you've taken care of your soil and you've got enough lime and you've got enough fertilizer in the soil, with the beautiful weather that you get here in the time that you do get good weather, you can grow a really nice vegetable garden.
Oh yes, you can grow a good vegetable garden in approximately 75 to 80 days.
Well, I need to show the viewers one thing here. I want to pull up one of these turnips. I mean, look at the size of this guy. And you say you do basically an 80-day bit of gardening.
Yeah, well that one now would be that went in around the 10th of June.
10th of June.
And here we are at the end of August.
Wow.
And but this would have been a lot bigger had I not broken the leaves. But I break the leaves off to get the greens.
To get the greens, of course.
So we break the leaves a couple of times a year. We skin them right down, and
wow.
Of course that cuts back on the growth of the turnip.
Well, it's a beautiful turnip. There's no bugs on it. Behind us we got a whole bunch of potatoes. What variety of potatoes do you grow?
They're called a blue purple chief.
Purple chief.
Yeah, and they're a long blue potato similar to the blue pride. Now this is the only one that I grow, but in the area there's about 12 different kinds of potatoes growing, everything from Yukon Gold, Merton Pearl, Purple Chief, Blue Max, Gold Rush, Superior.
Wow.
There's
but this is a really old. This you say Blue
that's
Chief?
That's a real old.
Yeah.
No, Purple Chief.
Purple Chief.
And I just found an outlet for the seed now, but that seed that I've had for the last 40 years approximately.
40 years.
And we use it year after year, and it still comes good. And
that's great.
And they're a good keeping potato and delicious eating potato.
Wow. So you grow some great vegetables. Now, when we came into your garden though, because we're at your garden, you've got your garden center, but you've also got your own garden. But when we came in, I saw a whole bunch of flowers.
That's right, and that's my wife's department. She takes care of the flowers. I don't have anything to do with them.
Your wife, Marg.
And trees and shrubs and flowers, she spends her summer that she's home taking care of them.
Well, when we come back, we're going to go see Marg, and we're going to have a look at flowers that you can grow in a garden in Happy Valley Goose Bay. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. Now we've left the vegetable garden with Alan, and now we're in the flower garden with Marg. And thanks for taking us in here. This is beautiful. I'm looking at some gorgeous flowers, and the first one that really takes my fancy is this beautiful phlox. So this is really hardy. It's one of your best performers, I bet.
That's the amethyst phlox, and they do really well here.
Yeah.
It's a perennial, and I don't have to do any work with it at all. I put it in, and they perform beautifully every year.
My kind of flower, because we've got this
amethyst.
We've got a really nice dark red one here. We got a paler one over here. Beautiful. So these are tough as old nails, but then we've got over here some roses, and surely you've got to do something with them in the winter time. Now
this is something I'm experimenting with right now, and the standard rose tree. I'm hoping to overwinter them in an uneaten garage over the winter, somewhere they'll get a little light, very little heat, and
right.
I'll keep a little water on them periodically.
And so what sort of temperature are you going to let that go down to?
Probably down to 40s.
About the 40s, yeah.
I think any lower than that, and then we may end up stripping the bark. The bark may split, and then
that's right.
If it gets too cold. Yeah.
Well, they're beautiful roses they put on. And what I love about gardens up here is that because you've got the heat and you've got the light and it's reasonably dry, the air is drier, the foliage is in perfect condition. There's no black spot, there's no fungus around. It really reacts nicely to the heat and the dry. So as long as you keep them well watered, they're in great shape.
That's right.
And of course, a thing that you don't have to worry about with hardiness at all is peonies. Now they're long gone, but peonies must perform nicely.
They do well. They're beautiful. I wish I could keep them the year round. And I have all different colors, from a white that opens up pink, from a red to a pink, a pale pink in the dark. They're
Really?
beautiful.
And
They
some
are
of them are actually
beautiful.
nicely scented.
Yes, they are. They've got a nice, almost like Pond's cold cream fragrance.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And then beautiful full display of hips over there on that gorgeous rose. Now,
And that's a forsythia next to it.
all right, and that's so that you got some springtime flowers in probably in June, late June, for
Beautiful
you.
yellow
Yeah.
flowers come out on it first. Yeah.
And then that rose there with the hips on, is that one of those pink or the white?
It's a
rugose?
pink one. Yes, it's a wild one. I just can't get rid of it. I dig out so much every year, and it just keeps coming back and performing. It's just one of those you can't get rid of.
Well, just to spite you, but the hips on it, I really like that look in the late summer going into the fall, because it's just beautiful. But there's one thing I got to talk to you about. I was walking along in your garden, and there's a very large white woman standing there. Now, who's that?
Alan calls that his Florida woman.
His Florida woman. I think we need to investigate that.
We can take a look at it.
Okay. So we're at the top of the garden now. We've walked past a beautiful weeping birch, a beautiful Amur maple. You've got variegated dogberries. It's just beautiful. But tell me about this here. Where did she come from?
That's what Alan likes to refer to as his cement lady. And that we found sitting near a pool in one of the parks in Florida.
You found it by a pool in Florida. Did you steal it?
No. It was sitting there as part of the decor of a pool, a swimming pool in Florida, in a park where we used to stay.
We're in Labrador now.
They were trying. Yeah, I know. They were trying to get rid of it because there was a lot of maintenance. It had to be sand blasted every year, and it had to be painted, and some people were offended by the fact the lady didn't have much on.
So you adopted her.
So we put claims on it and carried it all the way back from Florida in our van.
That is quite
It
amazing.
took the whole length of the van to do that.
Yeah, well, she really does add something to the garden.
It's his choice.
And I suppose you could paint the towel different colours, but right now it goes beautifully with this lobelia.
It does.
But maybe in another year she can have a red towel or something like that.
And the lovebirds in the background there also. So.
I know. I think you guys have fun in your garden, and really that's what we should be doing. We should be having fun in our gardens. And so Alan and Marg have told us about a whole bunch of other gardens in Happy Valley Goose Bay, and we're going to go look at some of those. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. Now we go to Debbie Preston, and she's going to tell us about some nasty problems with foliage.
So this week we're going to have a look at some mottling or leaf spots that occur on some of our plants. It can be a really hard disease or a problem to diagnose because it's caused by so many different things, and it's really a process of elimination. So we're going to have a look at this planter, which is planted with 3 different tuberous begonias. These are annual plants. We've got a spike in the center. But you can see that on only one of the tuberous begonias we've got some of this mottling or leaf problems that are developing. And if you look really closely at the leaf, you can see that it starts off with little yellow spots. It's spreading. It seems really irregular, spreading in through the leaf. And as it gets more developed, less and less of the green is showing, it goes really yellow. And it's also causing some puckering of the leaf, some distortion of the leaf as well. And if you look really closely at the newer leaves, the smaller ones, you can see that it's just starting to develop in there, and that pale yellowness is starting on the new leaves. It's only on one plant of the 3 plants in this planter, So that is a clue to how we're going to diagnose this. Mottling or spotting of the leaves, if it was along in between the veins and the veins were stayed green, we'd call that chlorosis. And chlorosis can be caused by a mineral deficiency, either lack of calcium or lack of iron. That mineral deficiency can be caused by root damage, that the roots can't take up the minerals, or poor pH, or just the minerals are not available in the soil. Especially in a container like this that's planted with a soil mix that we put in, maybe the minerals were just not available in that soil that we used. Because it's not along the veins, I don't really think it's chlorosis in this case, but you could take a soil sample into the lab and get it tested to see if there was a soil problem, especially if it was a more valuable plant or a shrub or something that was showing those problems. You'd want to try and diagnose it that way. In this case, I think it's a virus disease that's developed because, again, it's only on one plant. If it was a nutritional problem, I think it would show up on all the plants. If it's a virus disease, in this case, on this annual plant, the way it's going to spread by me touching the leaves and getting sap on the leaf and transferring it to another plant. For example, if I was pinching the dead flowers with my fingers, pinching them off and then getting the sap, but then going to the next plant and pinching flowers, I would spread the disease myself throughout the planter. Insects that are feeding, like aphids that are feeding on the sap of the leaf, would suck the sap, and then if they move on to another leaf of another plant, they would also be a vector and spread the disease that way. So virus diseases are easily spread throughout the garden that way, especially when you don't realize that you are the vector. A lot of the virus diseases are not killed by bleach solution on your tools. So that's something, again, that you'd have to consider. When you normally sterilize your tools with bleach, you're not necessarily killing the virus diseases. 5 minutes in a boiling solution is probably one way to sterilize tools, but that's not something that people would normally do in the garden. It might be a practice in the nursery, so you don't spread it throughout the nursery in a production situation. In this case here, the plant is starting to decline. Once it gets really bad, I'd probably take it out. Again, it's an annual planter, so I'll probably get a few weeks out of it before it causes too much trouble. One thing I will do is take all the soil out, all the plants and everything. I won't compost it this year. I'm going to destroy it, either burn it or get rid of it. I'm going to sterilize the pot at the end of the season before I plant next year, and I'm going to make sure that any old leaves that are fallen down around the planter in my garden are going to be taken up and destroyed as well. That way I probably won't have the problem again next year. It's a virus disease. Again, it's something that happens throughout your garden, but again, it's not something that you're going to be able to control from year to year really easily. Something that you're going to want to keep sanitation, clean up the garden, and hopefully it won't come back, especially in annual plants. In permanent plants, it's not something that you can spray for or anything like that. You may have to destroy the plant and get rid of it, and possibly get rid of the soil around it as well. So that's one of the problems that happen in our garden. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Some great advice for you in your garden. Now we're going to leave the garden, get back on the trails, and in some of the darker parts of the woodland, you will see some beautiful plants. I'm standing in a woodland surrounded by ferns. What a beautiful mass of plants this is. Ferns are quite common right the way across Newfoundland and Labrador, and we usually think of them as forest plants. But there are about 50 different species of fern, and some of them are right up in the alpine, living in little crevices in rocks. Some of them are just living in peat in the alpine, and others are deep in the forest. So, all sorts of different shapes and sizes of ferns. They're beautiful plants, but they are not flowering plants. They don't have flowers like you would expect. Ferns produce or reproduce by spores. And for most ferns, you will find the spores on the backs of the leaves. And here's a fern leaf, and it's covered in spores. And these spores get released, they blow around in the wind, and when they hit the forest soil, they will germinate into a tiny little plant, probably the size of a small fingernail. And that will have the reproductive bodies on them, and when the sperm and the egg get together, and here the sperm, it swims to the egg, and when they get together, a new fern is born, and that will grow up and be the ferns we see. So some ferns will see the spores on the underside of the leaves, but on this fern, which is a beautiful fern called the cinnamon fern, the spores are on separate leaves themselves. Now this one is well over, but that entire leaf is dedicated to spore production, and if we look on the underside of the leaf, you won't see any spores there at all. So all sorts of ways and means of doing it, but ferns basically have spores and tiny little gametophyte plants, and then these big old plants that produce the spores for the next generation. Interesting little bit of botany, wonderful plants. If you've got a shady spot, get some ferns in your garden, they're beautiful. Well, they might not have flowers, but ferns really are quite beautiful. Next week we'll find us back in Labrador. MUN Professor Hans Rollman will give us a brief history of Moravian gardening in Labrador, which dates back all the way to the mid-1700s. We'll talk about how to grow a lawn in Labrador. Not an easy chore when sand is a big part of the soil makeup. Then we'll visit the garden of Joe and Anita Badcock, whose vegetables will be the envy of any gardener anywhere. Debbie Preston will talk about a common problem that affects seedlings, and that's damping off. It's not an unusual problem, but it can be a really big problem if not dealt with properly. I'm going to hunt for a native Newfoundland plant that's related to the holly family, and it's called the winterberry. Well, I hope you enjoyed our first trip to Labrador, and stay tuned for next week when we'll have part 2 of our adventures up north. And really we have to thank Provincial Airlines. They treated us like kings and sponsored our trip up north. So, thanks to Provincial Airlines, thanks to you for watching, and we'll see you next week.